Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at Abram's rescue of Lot in Genesis chapter 14 in our continuing study of the book of Genesis. Genesis 14, and it came about in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, that's the ancient name of Mesopotamia, that we had Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. Now that's a number of names, so let's rehash at least a part of that. You have a coalition of kings. You have the king of Shinar, which, as we said, Mesopotamia, Elasar, possibly Larsa, which was one of the cities in southern Mesopotamia. Elam, those are the Elamites to the east of Mesopotamia. Goyim, we're not sure. The word Goyim just means nations. Maybe that area of northern Mesopotamia. And this coalition goes on a raiding party coming down into Canaan. And all these came as allies. These cities of the plains came as that are going to be the recipients of this raid, the ones that are going to be raided. All of these came as allies to the valley of Sodom, that is, the Salt Sea. Now that's interesting because we're told it's the valley of Sodom, which just means the valley of salt, and then we have an explanation, the Salt Sea. And yes, you say, well, is it a valley, or is it a sea, or is it both? Or is it a valley that eventually became a sea? And my answer is, I don't know. However, the Dead Sea is today the lowest place on the face of the earth. When I first started teaching the Bible, it was over 40 years ago, I used to say that the Dead Sea was 1,200 feet below sea level. It's actually sunk another 2,000 feet, so now it's nearly 1,400 feet below sea level. It's the lowest place in the world. Well, these cities, for 12 years, they had served Chedorlaomer, but the 13th year, they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, those kings we mentioned, this coalition of kings came and defeated the Rephaim in Ashtaroth Karanim, and the Zuzim in Ham, and the Emim in Shavath Kiriathim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. In other words, they come through all these cities in what today is the eastern side of the Jordan area, the area of Syria and Jordan. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, the same place that we're going to see the Israelites attempt to go into the land at a later date. And they conquered all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who lived in Hezazon Tamar. So they do this raiding party, taking in a number of different cities, a number of different areas, and they're just taking anything that's not nailed down so they can take it with them back home. And the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, came out, and they arrayed for battle against them in the valley of Sodom, against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Sodom was full of tar pits. Now that's again, we're not sure exactly where in the valley. This is the southern part of the Jordanian River Valley. And the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and they fell into them. That is, they fell into those tar pits. It became a trap for them. But those who survived fled to the hill country. Then they took all the goods. This is the raiding party. They took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food supply and departed. And they also took Lot, Abram's nephew, and his possessions and departed, for he was living in Sodom. Now we had seen him before go down to the area of Sodom, but now he's moved into Sodom, and as a result of being in Sodom, he's captured with everything that they capture from Sodom. Then a fugitive came and told Abram, it's interesting, he's called Abram the Hebrew. Can't call him an Israelite because there are no Israelites yet, but he's the Hebrew. going back to possibly that ancestor of his named Eber. And Abram was living just where we left him in the last chapter. Now he was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite. And we're told also that the brother of Eshcol and the brother of Aner, and these were allies with Abram. So he's living with these Amorite peoples, and they've allied themselves, and they're living nice and peacefully because that raiding party did not come their way. And he hears the news that Lot's been taken captive. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he led out his trained men, born in his house, 318, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. Now, it wasn't called Dan back then. It was called Laish. We find that out in Judges chapter 18. That's where we read about how the name of the place was changed to Dan. Interesting that archaeologists have recently uncovered the gate of Laish, the ancient site which eventually became Dan. And this gate dates back to Abram's day. Well, Abram chases them up to that area of Laish, or to Dan, what would later on become known as Dan, and he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them, and pursued them as far as Hobah. So we're not given a lot of details of the battle, but it was a night attack. And he strategically divides his forces and maybe hits them from several sides and pursues them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. That's way up to the north. He brought back all of the goods and also brought back his relative Lot with his possessions, and also the women and the people. These are all those people that had been rescued. So he goes to rescue Lot, and a number of other people are blessed as a result. A bunch of other people are rescued as a result. Then after his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the other kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, that is the King's Valley. King's Valley would be, you have the King's Highway, that's to the east of the Jordan River. And so we have this valley in that area. And we see this king that comes out. Now we're going to see another king in just a moment, because we have this king that comes out, Bera, the king of Sodom, and that we were already told that was a sinful city, a city of sinful pleasure. We're going to meet in a moment, a different king, a king by the name of Melchizedek, a king of Salem, and the word Salem means peace. Bera comes out to meet Abram, and Melchizedek is also going to come out and meet Abram. In the case of Bera, he's going to offer riches to Abram. In the case of Melchizedek, he's going to offer a blessing to Abram along with bread and wine. Bera, in his case, Abram's going to refuse his offer. In the case of Melchizedek, Abram is going to accept his blessings and the gifts, and he's going to give Melchizedek a tenth of everything. In the case of Bera, Abram returns all of his riches and the people. In the case of Melchizedek, Abram gives to him a tenth, that is, of all the spoils of war. Bera represents the city of man. Melchizedek represents, he was a literal king, but he represents the city of God. And it's a reminder of the one who came to die for us, who in his last days before his death, burial, and resurrection comes to Jerusalem, presents himself as the king, and by his death on the cross takes us into the city of God. Now, here's Melchizedek. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. And we're told, now, Salem, that's like I said, the ancient name of Jerusalem. Melchizedek, the word Melech is the word for king, and Zedek is the Hebrew word for righteousness. So his name, at least in Hebrew, literally means king of righteousness. And he comes out with bread and wine. This is the first time we've seen bread and wine mentioned anywhere in the Bible. And we're told that he was a priest of God Most High. We don't know where he came from. We don't know what kind of priesthood this was. He comes out of the pages of past antiquity. When he's done, we're not going to see where he goes after this. We're not giving any genealogy. And in that, he reminds us a lot of Jesus, who himself brings bread and wine representing his broken body and his shed blood for us. And it's for that reason that the New Testament describes Jesus as a priest after the order of Melchizedek, who comes out of the pages of the past, yes, born in Bethlehem, but existed long before he was born, who pre-existed, and whose kingship is from the city of God. Melchizedek comes and he blesses Abram. He says, we read, he blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." And he, we take that, and Abram gave him a tenth of all. Abram recognizes his priesthood, takes the blessing, and worships, not Melchizedek, he worships the Lord, and he recognizes Melchizedek as a representative, and maybe even as a type of something much greater. Now, meanwhile, the king of Sodom says to Abram, "Give the people to me, and take the goods for yourself." You know, we have these dealings with Melchizedek. Now our attention goes back to the king of Sodom, and he says, you know, you can just give me the people, you can keep everything, because after all, you're the great deliverer. Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have sworn to the Lord Most High," notice the same title that we saw, which was introduced through Melchizedek, God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, "that I will not take a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours, for fear that you would say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing except what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, those Amorites. Let them take their share. I'm going to take the operating expenses, but I'm not going to take anything, lest it be said that I have received my riches from Sodom." You see, Abram recognizes that his riches come from God Most High, and he wants the attention and the worship to be given, and the credit to be given to God, in whom he is trusting.